In the vast and arid expanse of the Australian outback, deep in the red center, you come into the world. You are born completely helpless, blind and deaf, emerging from your mother's cloaker, which is positioned just at the base of her tail. Initially, you are no bigger than a jelly bean, and your first challenge in life is nothing short of a monumental climb. You must scale the heights of your mother's pouch to find nourishment, a task that requires you to use your tiny hands and feet to grip her fur, working your way up to get to the precious milk. Why is it that before you can even see, you're forced to endure this tough journey? What strange sense of humor does nature have that made this your first task in life? But despite the difficulty, you've made it. You've reached the milk, and now you can drink your fill, taking in all the essential nutrients your tiny body needs to grow. What you don't yet know is that your mother is carefully controlling the fat content in her milk, adjusting it to provide the right nourishment for you and your older sibling, who has already grown large enough to live outside the pouch as a fully grown joey. For a full 34 weeks, you remain nestled in your mother's pouch, your only world, growing stronger, developing fur, and slowly becoming more like a true kangaroo rather than the vulnerable newborn you once were. As the weeks pass, your mother's pouch starts to feel more and more cramped, and you begin to sense the urge to explore the world outside. When you stick your head out for the first time, you're greeted with an endless stretch of arid land, a vast plain of desert stretching out in every direction. You see other kangaroos all around you, some older, some younger, and many of them belong to your family, a large group known as a mob. In the center of the mob is the alpha, a massive male kangaroo who stands out among the rest. His expression is calm and relaxed as he basks in the sunlight. He's your father, the protector of the entire group, and you watch him with awe. Suddenly, the alpha's ears prick up. Alert. Something is amiss. A dingo has been spotted lurking in the bushes, and your father prepares to defend the mob. The dingo springs from the underbrush, but with one swift, powerful punch from your father, the battle is over before it even began. Your father's strength is awe-inspiring, and you and the other male kangaroos can only stare in amazement. This is what it means to be the alpha. But time passes, and eventually, a new challenger arrives. He's an adult buck, tall and strong, with a bright red coat that helps him endure the harsh outback sun. Let's call him Big Red. He's slightly taller and more youthful than your father, giving him a slight edge, but your father has years of experience, and that counts for a lot. The fight begins with a couple of fast jabs from Big Red, but your father doesn't give him a chance to land any solid blows. There's an unspoken rule in kangaroo battles. Those who kick excessively are usually weaker. As Big Red grows tired, his kicks become weaker, and your father seizes the opportunity, landing a decisive blow. Big Red collapses, and your father retains his alpha position. Now, you've outgrown your mother's pouch, and you're standing proudly alongside her as your father's victory is celebrated. You're starting to mimic your father's moves, play fighting with the other joeys, and learning what it takes to become a strong and capable kangaroo. Your sister, now fully mature, is attracting attention from the males, including Big Red, but she's not interested in him anymore. You, on the other hand, continue to play fight with your mother, who helps you hone your skills. Little do you know, she is also pregnant with your new sibling. Despite the harsh conditions of the outback, your mother is able to pause the development of the unborn child in her womb through a process known as embryonic diapause, which allows her to delay giving birth until conditions improve. One night, as you're resting beside your mother, you're suddenly awakened by the sound of your father pounding the ground with his powerful legs. He's spotted something dangerous. Out of the bushes, a pack of bloodthirsty dingoes emerges, charging at the mob. Panic sets in, and your mother urges you and your sister to run for safety, while your father, Big Red, and the other males prepare to fight and buy time for the younger members of the mob to escape. You and your sister hop away, fleeing into the distance. You can only hope that your father survives the attack. The next morning, the mob returns to the scene of the battle, but what they find is devastating. Your father's lifeless body lies on the ground, a casualty of the fight. Big Red and the other males stand in silence, their eyes fixed on the red sand. The loss is profound, and while you're filled with grief, you know that your mother is devastated. The trauma is too much for her to bear, And even though her sisters and relatives gather around to console her, it doesn't seem to help. In kangaroo society, the matriarchal bonds run deep. Males may take on the role of protector, but once they reach maturity, they must leave the mob they were born into and find another. This means that the females of the mob, grandmothers, mothers, daughters, share a deep, familial connection with one another, and it is these bonds that will carry on after your father's passing. Big Red assumes the role of the new alpha, his sheer size making him an imposing figure. No one challenges him for the position, but you harbor a deep sense of revenge. You've spent the last few years sparring with the smaller males, getting stronger, and training for the moment when you can challenge Big Red. The droughts are hard, and travel is slow, but when the time comes, you're ready. Your mob sets out on a long journey across the harsh desert, moving at a pace of about 12 miles per hour due to the intense heat. After a long, grueling journey, you finally find an oasis of green grasslands, where the mob can graze and survive. But Big Red has a different agenda. He's focused on mating with the females, and your sister catches his eye. You, still not fully matured, can't do anything about it. But you've got plenty of time to train, and you spend the next 2 years building your strength. At 4 years old, you've reached your full size, standing at 6 feet tall, and it's time to take on Big Red. The fight begins with a series of punches and jabs, and although you're strong, Big Red's experience gives him an edge. The fight intensifies, but despite your strength, he lands a devastating blow that leaves you weakened. It's clear you're not ready to defeat him yet, and as a male, it's time for you to leave the mob and seek another. Male kangaroos cannot be the alpha of the mobs they were born into, and so you venture out alone, searching for a new mob to join. As you wander the vast outback, you encounter a group of emus near a water source, and for a while you relax with them. But then, the ground trembles, and you spot the source of the disturbance: a pack of dingoes. In a desperate bid for safety, you leap into the water, but the dingoes follow you. However, they're struggling with the deep water, and you realize that this might be your moment to fight back. With surprising strength, you tackle one of the dingoes and drag it under the water, holding it in a chokehold until it stops struggling. The other dingoes, terrified by what you've just done, flee in fear. In that moment, you feel a rush of accomplishment. Who knew you had that in you? Months later, you've reached the peak of your physical strength and find a new mob. The alpha, a scarred and battle-hardened male, stands tall before you. It's a tough fight, but you're determined to win. The battle is intense, and though you're able to block his blows, he eventually manages to land a decisive strike. You may have lost, but you've learned from the experience. You take time to recover and, 2 months later, challenge him again. This time, you're ready. The fight is brutal, but your experience and patience win out, and the alpha collapses. You've become the new leader of the mob. With the other kangaroos circling around you, acknowledging your victory, you take your place as the new alpha. Your first task is to find your mate and settle down, and soon enough, you're watching the first joeys emerge from their mother's pouches. As the seasons change, so too does the mob. You stand proudly as the new alpha, ready to lead your family into the future, just as your father once did.